So the Moondrop Arias are basically Moondrop taking the star fields, copying them, changing them a little bit, and making it cheaper, which I'm not gonna complain about, and have done a good job this time around, I would say. Now, we'll get into that after the disclaimer. I bought this unit with my own money. I actually bought two of them accidentally, so I'll probably be selling one off later on. Pre-ordered one before I actually got this pair, because apparently one seller was able to get it sooner than the other, so we want to just get this review out sooner, so I just bought another one, which is a bit of a mistake. But anyway, so this review will be completely of my own honest opinion. I'm not affiliated to any sellers or any stores whatsoever, so yeah, we'll just go straight through like build and just packaging, because that's not a lot of things to go through with these. In terms of build, they're pretty similar to the Starfields. There's a different paint used this time around. This is more of like a matte paint and some sort of like graphics around here. And it does say Aria on the back of the shell. But aside from that, there's not much difference in terms of shell shape and size compared to the Starfields. I don't know how resilient these are in terms of dings and scratches, because that was a common complaint with the Starfields. People tend to just clear coat them with like nail polish in order to to make them more resilient to dings and scratches. But I don't know how well that'll do. I haven't tried that myself, and I haven't tried to ding these around too much. So you might want to just baby these a little bit, because I also had to baby the Starfields while I had them with me. Now, in terms of the cable, this is probably one of the best cable in terms of functionality, but one of the worst in terms of aesthetics, I would say. Now, in general, if you look at these in the pictures, they'll look nice. The problem is, once you fold them around about, they have these kinks about them in the cable, and that just annoys me in terms of looks, because they don't really look that nice now that they're kinked and whatnot, because, well, I've tried to straighten them after I got them from when I took them out of the box, but I'm not able to get them to just stay straight. And I imagine if I were to put them back into the case every now and then, it'll get kinked up again and all those things. So yeah, that's a bit annoying. But from the splitter down, we don't really observe this problem. The rest of the cable, which is braided, has no issues whatsoever. And the reason why I love these functionality wise is that the microphonics of this cable is very low. Like, I believe that this like sleeving is probably helping it significantly, because this is probably one of the lowest microphonic cables that I've used in a very long time. It's extremely low, unless the IEMs are like you're pulling the IEMs from your ears, and if you have the chin slider set up correctly, if you rub around the cable and you dangle it here about left, right, about all that everywhere, you will not hear much from the cable. It's excellent. I'm not gonna complain much, if anything at all. I can only give it praise in terms of microphonics handling. And the jack of the Arias are a bit like they're quite huge actually, but they're an angle jack, so I'm not gonna complain much. Although they do extend quite far compared to most other angle jacks, so that is a bit of a concern. So if I plug it into my LG, they do extend quite a bit, which is less than ideal, but at least it's still an angle jack, so yeah, not gonna complain much. Now, as usual, I should have mentioned they also still have these two vents, because it's a single dynamic driver IEM. Not much to say there. You also get this case from Moondrop. You get 6 pairs of ear tips. You get your waifu box, which, as it turns out, people collect these. Like, a lot of people seem to buy these just for the boxes. I'm not really into that, but alright. And they have this whole pattern in the box, and the unboxing experience does feel quite nice. These are they're sort of a rose goldish color. Don't know if you can tell or not. So yeah, and that's pretty much all you get from the box and packaging and whatnot. So we'll just go right into sound. Now, sound of the Moondrop Arias. TLDR. They're a Harman tuned IEM. They have emphasized bass, emphasized upper mids, and that's pretty much it. It's like a more of a it's kind of like a U-shaped ish IEM. There's more sub bass than there is mid bass, and we'll just get into the detail when we talk about bass here, because the bass of the arias, there's a lot more sub bass than there is mid bass, and the sub bass of these is, I would say, they're quite excellent. The slam is quite satisfying. I would say if you like an emphasized sub bass region, I would say these will do you quite well. If you like, I mean, if you're a bass head, this will probably not be enough. But if you just like emphasize sub bass, I think these will do you quite well. They're also very nicely textured. So yeah, mid bass also has really nice kick and punch. So, and it's also emphasized, although not as much as the sub bass. But I would say that in general, this is more bass than enough. Now, the mid bass speed, I would say, is on the medium side. It's not too slow, but it's also not the fastest bass in the world. So if you listen to very fast music like metal, it'll fall behind. But most other songs, they should have no problems with whatsoever. And the speed of these, I mean, aside from that, aside from falling behind with faster music, although they are quite well controlled, but they do still bleed into the mid-range a little bit. So that's a little bit of an issue, but most of the time I don't really mind it, because it's not that bad. So yeah. Now, when we talk about the mid-range, the mid-range of the arias, I would say, is probably one of its. I think it's quite good. Like I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say I have any issues with the mid-range. The lower mids are more on the thicker side, so if you like a more like clarity-focused mid-range, if you like a more leaner mid-range, if you like less weight in your mid-range, these will probably not suit you. They're still quite thick in terms of the lower mid-range. Upper mids are also quite forward, so some people don't really like that. Maybe you do. If you listen to a lot of like J-pop and such, you will probably like these, but not a lot of people do. In terms of the mid-range, I'm not gonna complain much. Separation and detail overall in general of the mid-range and the arias are also quite good. Even in the price range, a little bit above it, like these are like going at like $80-ish. I would say these compete with something like the Starfields and the KXSS in terms of separation and detail. Now, the note thickness of the arias are more on the thicker side. Should have mentioned that earlier, but yeah, there's just not a lot of things I'm gonna complain or say about the mid range of the arias, because they're just simply, I can just simply describe them as good. Like there's not much issue I have with the mid range here. Now, when we talk about the treble of the arias, this is where I have issues with the arias, because the arias aren't the smoothest in terms of the treble. The lower treble is noticeably grainy. It's also quite a bit forward, together with that upper mid-range. So it does get a bit fatiguing sometimes for me, because I'm quite sensitive to lower treble. I would say that, hell, even the general treble region of the arias isn't the smoothest. It's a bit grainy. But detail and separation of the treble is also quite good, so I'm not gonna complain much. Aside from that graininess, of course. Extension also isn't the best. So extension, I would say, to my ears, these start to roll off at around like 16K, which 17K is where my hearing stops. So I'm not sure if there's something going on above that, but yeah. So cymbals and sibilants in general isn't really a big problem with the arias, although the treble is a bit grainy and the lower treble is a bit forward. It doesn't really result in too much sibilance or cymbal splashiness. So I would say, aside from the graininess, I think the treble is quite good. Now, when we talk about soundstage and imaging, this is where it gets, I would say, even better. Because the soundstage of the arias is quite surprising. Because if this were my head, I don't have my usual paper with graphics, unfortunately, with me today. Accidentally threw them into the trash. Now, if this were my head, the soundstage of the arias nearly gets to like the width of my head, but they're not really that far. I mean, they're not really going that far away from the center of my head. So in terms of like, if this were the center of my head, and this were the visible on my face. The center of the sound from the Arias comes around like here. It's not exactly at my face level, but I think it's okay. Like, it's not the most intimate IEM in terms of presentation. It's not too congested, not intimate, congested. Actually, I would say it's quite good even. Now, the only problem I have with the Arias is that I'm not generally sensitive to imaging issues and imaging accuracy, but the Arias, I could tell, don't really have that excellent imaging. Like, for some reason, I was only able to tell an accuracy of like 60-ish degrees. So I was only able to tell like the general like direction of where sound is coming from like front left-ish, right front-ish. I wasn't able to accurately tell where sounds were coming from with the Arias, which is odd because I'm not normally a very like imaging sensitive guy, but even with these I had issues. So yeah, that's one thing to keep in mind. If you want to use these for gaming, for example, these will probably they'll probably not be the best option for you. So yeah. Now this is the big one. This is probably the part that people have been waiting for, which is where I'm gonna be comparing them to the Starfields. I don't have the Starfield unit with me anymore as of now, but I've done the comparison. And compared to the Starfields, although the FRs seems very similar, and initially thought that I was going insane, but after comparing notes with some other people who also had the Starfields and Arias on hand, it turns out that there is indeed a difference in terms of sound. Sub-bass is quite similar. Mid-bass, there's a little bit less in the Moondrop Arias, but the overall bass of the Arias are better controlled than the Starfields, which is odd to me, because I mean, why would you want your lower end model to have more controlled bass? I don't get it, but okay, Moondrop, okay, I guess. There's also less mid-bass bleed. That's a nice thing also. Mid-range overall is a little bit thinner on the Arias. You might like that, you might not like that. If you already like the Starfields mid-range, you probably won't. Maybe you will not like these, maybe you'll like these. I'm not sure. They are definitely a bit on the thinner side compared to the Starfields. The upper mids of the Arias are a bit more aggressive to my ears, and especially that lower treble is definitely more aggressive compared to the Moondrop Starfields. And the treble region is quite a bit smoother on the Starfields, which some consider it as an issue because they consider the Starfields to be too smooth. They consider it to be blunt or maybe even not as defined. I would consider it just, I mean, I like the Starfield's treble presentation better than the Arias, simply put. But if you don't mind the graininess in the treble of the Arias, then you'll probably appreciate these more because they have a more perceived clarity compared to Starfields. So if you're one of those people who consider the Starfields to be a muddy mess, these will probably do better than those. So yeah. Now, aside from that, the soundstage width is also better on the Arias, but imaging is significantly better on the Starfields. I don't know why that is. I would assume that they're probably using a similar driver, or at least the acoustic chamber in these are probably quite similar. I don't know. I don't even know if they're using the same drivers or not, or if these shells in these are identical or not. I have no idea. But as long as as long as they keep making it cheaper and they're retaining similar sound quality levels, I'm not gonna complain about it too much. So yeah. Now, aside from that, the cable I do like better on the Arias, cause they're just better functionality wise. But I do like the looks of the Starfield cable better. But that's mostly just personal preference in terms of like looks and whatnot, and they're not as important in terms of sound. Now, I don't think that there's lots of more competition in this price range compared to the Arias. I don't really have that many options on me at hand. I can compare these to the hard mirrors in terms of from memory, because I do have quite a memory of what the hard mirrors did sound like. But so take this comparison with a huge grain of salt. The hard mirrors to me sounded way tighter than in the bass and the treble than the Arias. They were better controlled in the bass, but quantity wise the bass of the hard mirrors is quite significantly less than the Arias. Treble quality, which is comparable, I would say that the treble of the hard mirror is a little bit better in terms of detail compared to the Arias. The Arias also a bit more grainier. Mid-range, I would say it's just a bit more pleasing on the Arias. The mid-range of the hard mirrors to me were just too lean. So yeah. Aside from that, I just want to say that Moondrop has just done an excellent job. They've been able to create consistently good sounding gear, making it cheaper and available to wider markets. Of course, don't at me when about the SSRs, because the SSRs is probably one of my most despised products of all time. But I like these a lot. And I like the direction that Moondrop is going at with these. If they are able to get these even cheaper, I really want to see that happen. I want to see better sound be available to the mass markets for even cheaper. And yeah, just kudos Moondrop if you've managed to deliver another excellent product. So yeah. Which I don't have I mentioned that these are only like $80? They're $20 cheaper than the Starfields. So it's just get these. If you don't have the Starfields yet, they're too expensive for you. Maybe get these. There's like $20 cheaper. So yeah, then I think that's pretty much all I've got to say about the Arias. So like if you like this video, comment what you think, and subscribe if you want more content like this. And see you guys next time.